Welcome back, everyone. If you enjoy the story, please leave a like and subscribe, or we revert to the Dark Ages. The biting Welsh wind whipped off the Irish Sea, carrying with it the scent of salt and the promise of a long, hard winter. Detective Inspector Glyn Davies huddled deeper into his tweed coat, the collar scratching uncomfortably against his neck. He stood on the blustery cliff-top, overlooking the sleepy town of Machynlleth, a far cry from the bustling streets of London where he usually operated. This was his first time in Wales, and honestly, he didn't care much for it. Davies wasn't here for the scenery. He was here for acid. Not just any acid, mind you. This was the biggest LSD operation anyone in Scotland Yard had ever heard of, an intricate web stretching from the back alleys of London, through the rolling hills of Wales, and potentially across the Atlantic. They called it Operation Julie, a name chosen at random to avoid leaks, but one that had quickly become whispered with a mix of fear and fascination within the force. It had all started with a tip-off, a seemingly insignificant piece of information gleaned from a low-level drug dealer in Notting Hill. The man, desperate to avoid jail time, had mumbled something about a chemist in Wales and orange sunshine. Davies, then a young detective constable, had been skeptical. LSD wasn't new, but it was usually produced in small clandestine labs, barely enough to supply the local rave scene. This sounded different, bigger, and more organized. He'd brought the information to his superiors, who, after initial hesitation, saw the potential. The orange sunshine reference was key. It was a particularly potent and sought-after form of LSD that had flooded the market a few years prior, then mysteriously vanished. If this Welsh chemist was behind its resurgence, they were looking at a serious player. The investigation began slowly, painstakingly. Davies, promoted and transferred to the drug squad, spent months tracking down leads, interviewing informants, and sifting through mountains of paperwork. The trail led him to a small, unassuming cottage nestled in the Welsh countryside, owned by a man named Richard Kemp. Kemp was an odd duck, a former biochemist with a passion for organic farming and a disturbing lack of enthusiasm for anything else. His neighbors described him as quiet, eccentric, and harmless. But Davies wasn't buying it. He knew that appearances could be deceiving, especially in the world of drug trafficking. He put Kemp under surveillance, watching his every move, his every interaction. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, but Kemp remained elusive, his activities seemingly innocuous. Just as Davies was starting to lose hope, a break came in the form of a disgruntled employee. Andy Monroe, a young man who had worked on Kemp's farm, approached the police, claiming he knew about Kemp's true business. He spoke of secret laboratories, of chemicals and equipment hidden in outbuildings, of late-night meetings with shady characters. He even provided a sample of the infamous orange sunshine, claiming it came directly from Kemp's lab. Monroe's testimony was the spark Davies needed. He obtained a warrant and, with a team of officers, raided Kemp's cottage. Inside, they found not just a simple farmhouse, but a sophisticated, state-of-the-art LSD laboratory. Chemicals, glassware, and production equipment filled the rooms, along with thousands of doses of orange sunshine, ready for distribution. The raid on Kemp's cottage was just the tip of the iceberg. As Davies and his team delved deeper into the investigation, they uncovered a vast network of individuals involved in the production, distribution, and sale of LSD. The network stretched across England, Wales, France, and even reached contacts in California. They found a meticulous accounting system, detailing every transaction, every expense, every profit. It was clear that this was a highly organized and sophisticated operation, run by intelligent and ruthless individuals. The operation was unlike almost any other drug-running operation in the UK at the time. It was run like a legitimate business, very well organized, and everyone involved worked independently and were only responsible for their part. This was very different from the usual crime syndicates. The chemists who were producing the LSD were keen to do it for the right reasons. They wanted to offer the public psychedelics, to allow them to open their minds. They were not in it for the money, but rather for their beliefs. a complete contrast to most drug operations that purely care about the profits. One of the key figures in the network was David Solomon, also known as Professor Acid, a charismatic and enigmatic man who acted as the group's spiritual leader and chief financier. Solomon, a former psychologist, had become disillusioned with mainstream society and saw LSD as a tool for personal and social transformation. He funded the operation with his own personal wealth, viewing it as a way to spread his message of enlightenment and change. Another pivotal individual was Alston Hughes, or Smiles, a brilliant organic chemist who had perfected the process of synthesizing LSD. Hughes was a meticulous and dedicated scientist, driven by a desire to create the purest and most potent form of the drug possible. He saw his work as an art form, a way to unlock the hidden potential of the human mind. The investigation dragged on for months, with Davies and his team working tirelessly to unravel the complex web of relationships and transactions. They conducted hundreds of interviews, executed dozens of search warrants, and seized millions of doses of LSD. The scale of the operation was staggering, exceeding anything they had ever imagined. As the investigation progressed, Davies found himself increasingly drawn into the world of LSD and its proponents. He read about the drug's history, its effects, and its potential benefits and drawbacks. He interviewed users, dealers, and even the chemists themselves, trying to understand their motivations and beliefs. He began to see that the people involved in Operation Julie were not simply criminals, motivated by greed and self-interest. They were idealists, driven by a desire to change the world, to create a better future for themselves and others. They believed that LSD could unlock the potential of the human mind, promote personal growth, and foster social harmony. Davies didn't necessarily agree with their views, but he couldn't deny their sincerity. He realized that the war on drugs was not simply a battle against criminals, but a struggle against ideas, against beliefs, against a different way of seeing the world. As the net closed in, the members of Operation Julie began to turn on each other. Accusations flew, trust eroded, and the carefully constructed network began to crumble. Some fled the country, others went into hiding, but most were eventually apprehended. The trials of the Operation Julie defendants were a media sensation, capturing the attention of the British public and beyond. The defendants, who included chemists, dealers, and financiers, presented a diverse and often contradictory picture of the LSD network. Some expressed remorse for their actions, others defended their beliefs, and still others claimed ignorance or coercion. The trials dragged on for months, with the defendants facing a range of charges, from drug trafficking to conspiracy to manufacture illegal substances. The prosecution presented a compelling case, detailing the scale of the operation, the profits involved, and the potential harm caused by the distribution of LSD. The defense argued that the defendants were not driven by greed, but by a genuine desire to help others. They presented evidence of the positive effects of LSD, its potential to treat mental illness, and its role in promoting personal growth and creativity. They argued that the government's war on drugs was misguided, that it criminalized harmless behavior, and that it failed to address the root causes of drug abuse. Ultimately, the jury sided with the prosecution, finding the defendants guilty on a range of charges. The sentences handed down were severe, with some defendants receiving lengthy prison terms. Operation Julie had come to an end, but its legacy would continue to reverberate for years to come. Davies, who had played a central role in the investigation, found himself both vindicated and conflicted. He had successfully dismantled a major drug trafficking operation, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had also destroyed something more, something intangible, something that represented a different way of thinking about the world. He knew that the war on drugs would continue, that new networks would emerge, and that the cycle of addiction and enforcement would repeat itself. But he also knew that the ideas and beliefs that had driven Operation Julie would not simply disappear. They would continue to resonate with those who sought a different path, a different way of life. Standing on the Welsh cliff top, the wind still howling, Davies looked out at the vast expanse of the Irish Sea. He knew that the world was a complex and contradictory place, full of both beauty and darkness, hope and despair, and he knew that his job, as a police officer, was to navigate that complexity, to protect the innocent, and to uphold the law, even when it meant confronting his own beliefs and values. As he turned to leave, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held, both for himself and for the world. He knew that the answer was not simple, that it required a willingness to listen, to understand, and to engage with those who held different views. It was a challenge, but one that he was willing to face. The case and the sheer volume of acid discovered would change the way crime was investigated in the United Kingdom forever. Thank you for listening, and remember to like and subscribe. The Dark Ages sound cool until you get the